Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our second of the Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute, PBBI, from Fresno State, California State University, Fresno, our second edition of this semester's fall lecture and conference and conversation series. We're very happy to be with all of you. Thanks to those of you who are joining us here on the Zoom webinar. Thanks to those of you who are joining us through the several of the groups that have graciously accepted to put it on their group as well through various social media outlets, especially on Facebook. And of course, this webinar, as all of our conversations, will be recorded, and hopefully our students who are not available to be live here can also take advantage of this at their own leisure. We're very, very happy to have a young author with us today. A wonderful book. I have read a little bit about it, and I'm just actually ordered it, and I'll show you how I did it, and you can do it as well anywhere in the world. Just recently launched, being launched today, actually, worldwide. And so we want to welcome from Portugal, Inês F. Oliveira. And this is, of course, our series, New Voyages of Discovery, because the Portuguese were involved in the discoveries, but there's always voyages. We just have to do them a little bit different than what they were done 400, 500, and 600 years ago. And so welcome, Inês, to Fresno State, California State University, Fresno, albeit virtually, but maybe someday in person.
Thank you so much for having me, Denise, and hopefully in person one day for sure.
Yes, for sure. That's we'd love to have you here. So let us talk to you a little bit about the book, about your experience, and about yourself as well. Just a little bit that is, of course, on the site, and that is that Inês is an author from Portugal, where she lives by the sea, and those of us here in the Central California, of course, are very envious of that, because we're two and a half hours from the ocean. With her husband and two children, she holds a master's degree from Carnegie Mellon University, I should say, and committed many years to the technological field. That was before turning to words and writing. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and how did writing come to you?
Yeah, so I started as a software engineer, in fact, and I worked as a developer for 2 years, and I realized that was not what I wanted to do, even if in the technology field, because in that time I wasn't nothing close to wanted to or thinking about being a writer. Although I always enjoyed writing, I've always received nice feedback about my writing, but I never thought I could do it. So I entered the technology field and worked in that area as a software developer. And at the first opportunity, I just went and studied. I took my master at Carnegie Mellon University and had the opportunity to do different courses. They had electives you could choose, a bit away from technology, and one of those I decided to do at the time was innovation management. And once I returned, I wasn't able to work in innovation management right away. I think the company where I was at wasn't prepared for that, but I was invited to start something around that area a couple of years later. So I did consulting while I didn't start at innovation management. And then I worked in innovation management, started a small team, and was able to have contact with a lot of methodologies that worked closely with the user. And that led me to being invited to manage a user experience team. And at that team, we had the need for writers, but we couldn't find any in the market. So there wasn't, the UX writing field was starting in Portugal. And I decided to dig in. I took a course in UX writing. I took a course in copywriting, and I decided that this was something I wanted to do. We just added up to my curriculum. It opened new doors, and because I had the technology behind that, the leap was kind of easy, because it was the time when technology companies were starting to need that kind of writing. So I decided to start that.
Well, that's a wonderful transition, obviously, but it
Yeah.
is a long way from
Yeah.
writing a children's novel, teenage novel. You have some Publishers Weekly gave a raving review, which is wonderful. So tell us a little bit about that process from technical writing to creative writing, and what drove you into this field, because it is a unique field. Even writers with lots of experience always say it's not an easy field to write a children's book. It's harder than it seems, you know. So what inspired you to this field?
You're right. It's not easy, especially because we're talking as a child in the book, and it's not easy to become that again. But my children were my main inspiration. So I rediscovered reading for them new children's books, new picture books, new middle grade books. And I really fell in love. So I started to look for courses in that area, and I really wanted to do creative writing. I was already writing in English. I wasn't sure I would be able to do that writing, that kind of writing, creative writing, because one thing is technology writing, another one completely different is to express our feelings, our emotions, and to create a story in English in another and a language that is not my native language. But I dig in, and I received amazing feedback, and I had, in a couple of years after that, I had this small story kind of a book, and I decided to take my chances. And I think I was really lucky with the people I knew after that. Yeah, and that crossed my way.
And so, as I said, the review from Publishers Weekly that I'd like to share with everyone, just a couple of words from it, which is says, and I quote, debut author Oliveira's lush prose brings the Portugal setting to life and portrays Amelia's grief with realism, her struggle to manage her emotions, as well as the deeper understanding she reaches of herself and the people around her, is endearing and rewarding. So, as you said, it's not your first language, it's not your native language, and this is a very, very good, a very well done piece by Publishers Weekly. They normally will do only what they like, as all reviews should be. How comfortable did you feel going into English and creating this story? How was this process for you? Of course, you've done a master's at an American university, but sometimes people have to write in their own language and then translate. But in this case, you wrote it all in English, correct?
Correct. But the first thing I did, and while talking here with my family, with my husband, I decided, okay, I'm going to read every middle grade book I can put my hands on in English. And I even set a goal in the beginning, a goal I can't always always accomplish, but I had this goal of reading one book per week. And when I had this idea for my book, and when I decided to plot it down, to write it down, to make it a story, what I did, I tried to figure out each book in the market that had a plot similar to mine, like a kind of a feeling that could help me understand how to create my own story, to the storyline, my theme, and also I had this strong feeling that if I based my story in a real life event, which is the case for this book, it would talk much more to my heart, and it would be much easier. And that is one of the feedbacks I'm receiving, is that the characters are relatable. And although I think I need to practice more in future books, I think it's a very, very nice feedback, and it gives me the strength and the courage to keep going.
And so, well, indeed, I mean, every writer, the first book is always all the books are a work in progress,
Yeah.
and so being in Portugal, and that fascinates me, and I know it fascinates some of the folks that I had sent some information about the book, is wow, being in Portugal and writing in English. Why? So, I mean, what was the main? Why did you write it in this language? And do you foresee it that in Portugal it will also sell? Because nowadays, of course, children in Portugal learn English at a young age. But still, you know, this is reading, this is a novel, a children's novel, yes. But all of the reviews, you know, classify it as a novel, and that's great. That's great because it takes children's literature even to a different level. So congrats for that. But why English? What was the major thought that you chose English?
Well, two reasons. The first one was I was already writing in English, and the short story I had was in English. So it didn't make much sense to me to just translate it to Portuguese, only to later on hoping that it would be translated to English again. So because the market is bigger and all of those reasons, but mainly because what I found in the US was a strong support, and it's really a community that not only teaches you how to write, but teaches you how to be in the market, how to gain connections, how to go through all the routes you have to go to kind of be successful, because I don't know if I'm successful, but at least you feel the support. People are there for you. There's a community, and that community, what I feel is that it's open to anyone who's willing to do the work. And that was the second strong reason I didn't want to give up on writing my stories in English. And I hope, of course, that one day I'll see my book in Portuguese and future books in Portuguese. But for now, I think it's being a nice route to go through, and a nice community to work with. And I feel the support, and that's important to me.
So you felt that through writing in English and through your connections, of course, with the writing world, and here in the U.S., you had the necessary help or the necessary support that one needs in order to feel comfortable of putting your work out there.
Yes, because I'm new to everything. Each step is a learning process. I go so slowly in the beginning. At each step, I take so many minutes, hours, I don't know, everything, even on social media. So it's really important to feel this support, and especially when you're starting out. So yes.
So the protagonist, and again, I'm just from the readings that I did, you know, that's what's available to promote the book. I hope to have the book here, I think tomorrow. That's the good thing about, and any you can get it from lead sources. I'm going to show you Amazon, but as everybody knows, I'm not a spokesperson for Amazon, and neither is University or PBBI at Fresno State. But the good thing is I will have it tomorrow. So the protagonist is Amelia, and it says here one of the writers that 10-year-old Amelia is sometimes awkward, often tongue-tied, and always with caps, a bright shining star even when she doesn't know it. Readers will adore her. So how did the story come to you? I know you've read a lot of children's books. I know that, of course, having children yourself, but and inspired, as you said, in real life situations. How did this story come to you, and how did you develop it into this protagonist that, of course, as this writer puts it, sometimes it's awkward, so that sometimes it's lovely, sometimes it's tongue-tied, sometimes it's a star. All of the things that 10, 11, and 12-year-olds have to go through, and sometimes we think that they're little adults, and they are in some aspects, but they're also developing as children.
Well, I'm lucky enough to have two kids with strong personalities that make me laugh every day, make me go mad each day, make me go wild, and that teach me to see things in different perspectives, and that always makes me laugh, even when I'm not with the will to laugh at the moment. But when I remember, yeah, they have like these characters, these personalities that truly inspire me. And as I said, this is a story based on real life events. And Calvin was actually our chinchilla for 21 years. And we had the Calvin before we had kids. And so their lives was always around Calvin. So Calvin was always in our homes from the moment they were born until he left us 21 years later. And one of the things I realized, and then we went through COVID and all of those, that period that really changed our mindsets at the moment, and the willing for kids to talk about things. I remember after that, my kids going to school, and we asked them about their day, how things went, and they didn't want to talk about that. And when we lost Calvin, it took them a couple of weeks before they truly wanted to talk some bit about it, and until they started to really cry about it. And it happened to my son, and he, a couple of weeks after we lost Calvin, he just started to cry out and say that he really missed our chinchilla. And I just connected the dots. And of course, it's based on real life events. It's not a memoir or anything like that, but it just made me think that, well, if my kids go through this process, a lot of kids must go too. And it just felt like it was right to write about that. And I had this connection to that moment. And it stood with me for a while, and until I started to write down my ideas, the storyline, my theme, and yeah, it just made sense at the time.
Well, and indeed, and that's what a good writer does. Of course, takes the connections of that happened to him or her, and then creates, of course, a piece of art, and that's what you've done with the Calvin and the Sugar Apples. So, of course, Calvin, I understand. And what came up? What drove you to the title of Calvin and the Sugar Apples, or should we just leave it for people to discover it? Either way.
No, it's okay. Well, my writing desk, we just changed the places here a lot at home because of COVID as well, and also because I had this office in one room, and my kids decided they each wanted a room, so I had to go to their play toy area. But the good thing is that I have this big window, and outside that big window we have our sugar apple tree. And yes, although Calvin in real life is not buried under our sugar apple tree, it just felt the right place. And I remember my youngest son going to school and always jumping to touch a sugar apple, and it just stood with me. And yeah, it just, like you said, connecting the dots, and it just felt right.
Indeed, and I'm going to share a little bit here from one of the sites where people can get the book, just to share the book. I think everyone can see that. I hope we can. And so here's the cover of the book, Calvin, and the sugar apples, and of course, with any good children's book, there's also always awesome illustrations, and the ones I were able to see from here, very, very well done. So how did you come up with, I believe the name is Vanessa, to work with you? Because it's kind of a hand-in-hand situation. I mean, a good illustrator can really help a children's novel come to life, because that's so important in these kinds of stories. So tell us a little bit about this process, because what I've seen, I've really enjoyed what's here that we can look at.
Yeah. So the credits go all to the publisher. The Collective Book Studio found Vanessa Balezza, which is she's a Venezuelan children's book author and illustrator. And as Angel from the Collective Book Studio said, we were very lucky to find Vanessa, because, and also the Collective Book Studio has a way of working the books as a work of art. And I think they did a really, really nice artwork with this book, as well as all the other books they published. But yes, and Vanessa, she told me one day that she was very lucky to work in these illustrations, because she had the opportunity to work with black and white sketches that are 90% like hand drawings, and that's a rare thing to find in the book industry. So yes, all credits go to the publisher and to the illustrator. They found each other and they did a wonderful job with the illustrations.
She's very good. They're excellent, and the bits that we're allowed to read here online, if people take the time to do that, you'll see that it illustrates really well with the storyline, of course, that you're trying to put forth. Let me ask you, Amelia has some challenges. Amelia, of course, feels sad sometimes, has friends, needs a hug, as is shown there, once in a while. We all do. And so why did you want to go into this field of bringing in some from the reviews, and again, not having read the book, but from the reviews, bringing in some issues that sometimes we think children don't have, but they actually do have, and how they can overcome them?
Yes, well, also a huge credit to the editor, John Race, from the Collective Book Studio. But Amelia has the same issues my kids go through each day. And there's, you'll read it in the book, but there's this tension in her relationship with her mother, which kind of relates to my relationship with my older daughter. And as she's growing up, that relation changes and has challenges. And I tried to explore the most I could in this story, that tension, like the stories my kids bring from school, little things that we don't think are worth conversation, but they bring that subject as a really, really important thing, and something that take us hours to discuss, and sometimes at night when we want to go to bed, and they remember to talk to us about those things. And I know it's important to them, and I also understand that for us, we know we've been through that, all of that, and we know it's nothing. When they grow up, they won't even remember those problems, but as their children and as they're living through those things, it's really important. And also the story of the talent show that Camila ends up missing at school. My inspiration was my daughter and a story she brought one day from school, that they had this talent show and she wasn't able to, for a different reason, of course, but she wasn't able to be there for, I don't even remember the reason why, but I remember her anguish and the way she was talking about it and how important it felt for her to be part of the show. And for example, this year, because that happened 2 years ago, and this year we didn't talk about the talent show anymore for a long time. And this year they have the talent show, and she was part of the talent show, and she was happy to be part of the talent show. So it's truly important things, and how grown-ups and children see things in different ways. And especially one of the things I explore in the story is the notion of time, that we grown-ups need to be always on time for something and have always things to do and tasks to accomplish. And kids don't see time like that. They just need their time. And also one day my daughter, she told me, because I don't remember what, but I was insisting with her on something, and she told me, you have to give me time. And yeah, all of those experiences and all the memories I keep inside, and how I learn from my kids, how we see things different, and how they grow up, they kind of come closer to the way we see things as well, how they evolve and how we evolve as parents as well. And I try to bring all of that to the book.
Indeed, and I think you bring a lot to the book for many reasons, and just analyzing the contents there, the table of contents. When you look at basically around 200 pages, and so that's a hefty book for a children's book. Obviously, we're talking with illustrations, and we're talking about, as folks can see right here, and I've already shown, and I'll show again so people can see it. I mean, there's writing, but there's also illustrations, and it's not like there is thousands of words in one page.
No,
That's the way children's books shouldn't be that way anyway, so they don't scare the reader or the children. But in 200 pages, from just the outset and from an outsider's perspective, I think it gives you some detail, and kudos to you for doing that, because it gives you a chance to explore these themes and to actually dive into them, with some level of profoundness that sometimes children's books don't do, unfortunately, because they're so small, and there's sometimes 30 pages, and you can't go into either. Sometimes I read a children's book. I don't read many of them. I'm not a specialist in it by any stretch of the imagination, but the ones I have read, or for my grandchildren when they were smaller, or just because if they're from a Portuguese author that I'd like to know a little bit about it, it seems like, well, there maybe, in 30, 35, 40 pages, how much can you go? What can you do? And there's something left behind. I think here you were able to explore these themes with some profoundness that children, of course, and their readers also, if someone is reading to them, but children in the ages of 10, as I think the book is like for children between the ages of 7 and 12, something like that. 13. So these are children that already can read, and so they can explore this, and sometimes we don't give children enough credit. They can handle a book of 200 pages.
Yes, and the book, I have one here. It's a more of a square, maybe the blurred, kind of a square format, and the pages are really airy, and it has not, as you said, not many words per page. It's not loaded, it's not heavy, and it feels really nice in the hand. It's for small hands. I was really, really happy when I could feel the book in my hands, and when my kids could feel the book. And it's not heavy, although it's hardcover, because one of the targets is libraries in the United States. So, and it's sued. It's really well done. but it's not a heavy book. It's lightweight and it feels really nice in the hand. And yes, I hope kids find this book like a channel, a way to find their own voice when they have to go through issues. And it also, the book talks a lot about balancing happiness and pain at the same time, and how both make part or are part of our daily lives, and we can't unfortunately have one without the other. And if we want to have a pet, we'll eventually, if we're lucky enough, we'll lose it before he loses us. So and that's just part of life. And it's this like the conflict of feelings, and how we can have both and still be happy and still find new friends and new happiness and new beginnings. And it's also about that, and how this load that we carry inside, and the hard part of telling others how we feel, how it's not like sometimes what I feel with my kids is not, the trouble is not that they know how to verbalize feelings. They just don't know if the people who's listening will validate their feelings. And I think it's mostly that than anything else. And because we grown-ups are always in such a hurry, we sometimes lose the moment, lose the time to validate that those small openings they give us. And yes, I hope it teaches both kids and grown-ups in a light way how to do those things, because I'm still learning as a mother, and I'm sure I'll be learning that all my life. It's not easy to balance everything.
It's indeed, and it's and sometimes, as you mentioned, a very good point. Sometimes there are openings there, and parents and grandparents don't see them because we're so busy with everything that goes on around the everyday part of living. So we just have a few more minutes left, and I want to first of all congratulate you and thank you for being here. On behalf of the university, on behalf of Fresno State, we'll promote it as much as we can. We're going to get obviously a copy for our library and our Portuguese section, which has books in English, not just Portuguese, but it's just anything to do. It's a very eclectic, but in a way interesting. And I think that, and also, of course, through the regular libraries, we'll try to get promoted as much as we can. So congratulations on this launching today worldwide. Hopefully you'll sell lots of books, and hopefully you'll touch lots of lives even. That's just as important as, of course, the selling part. But I was going to ask you, and I'm glad you have the book there with you. So I was going to ask you, it's an American tradition, as you know. It's not a very Portuguese tradition, but I like the American way better in this aspect. Some things I don't, but in this one, which is asking the author to read a little bit from the book. So I'm any part, it's up to you. But I think that it is always important to read or to listen to the author reading his or her work, and how she or he feels about any particular instance in the book. So a very, very American tradition that we'd like to put forth and continue here, which is giving the author the voice and sharing a couple of pages, if you don't mind, or 3 or 4 with us today.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm going to choose here an excerpt that it's kind of feels like a love letter, which I only realized not many days ago, that maybe this is also my love letter to Calvin, and my way to go and talk things out and to go through my feelings. Not just kids, we grown-ups also have a hard time doing that sometimes. So I'm going to read this page. You'll let me know if we have time for more. So Mom leaves the room and takes slow steps downstairs. Once I stop hearing her footsteps on the wooden floor, I grab the marker. I lean over the cage's floor, wide and clean, as if no one ever lived there. I take a deep breath and write, to my friend Calvin, who's been with me forever. I learned from you that talking things out brings peace to my heart. I learned from you that dark things become brighter when I share them. You'll never need a cage to return to me because you'll always be in my heart. I'm forever your home. Love, Amelia. I read my words over and over again. I don't want to write them wrong. I want everyone to know that Calvin lived here. This was his home for 21 years. We shared 10 years together, and I'll never forget him. I try to put the bars back into the cage's floor. They aren't right, but I'm sure Mom will help me fit them back in when she can. I take the drawings I made for Calvin out of the cage. I store them in my desk drawer next to the envelope with Calvin's picture and the paper note from Mom, Dad, and Lucas. I take the two pieces that form Lucas' magic wand from under my bed and try to put them together. I can fit them perfectly together and wrap them with tape. I use a ton to make sure it doesn't fall apart. So this is one page.
Fantastic. Great piece. And if you can
Thank you.
share us another one with us, we'd love to do that. As I look, I think there's a couple of questions that came through, and I'd like to pose them to you before we end as well.
So, but you want me to? Oh, sorry.
If you could read a little bit more, if you don't mind. Yeah, one more
So
passage, please. That'd be great.
Okay, so some good feedback I've been receiving is from the author's note, where I tell a bit of my story, and I'll read to you a bit of that. A real long-tailed chinchilla inspired this fictional story. The chinchilla's name was Calvin, after the comic strip Calvin and Hobbes by Will Watterson. We shared our home and love with Calvin for the 21 years he lived with us. 21 years may seem like a lot. In the wild, chinchillas can live up to 10 years. But if they live with humans caring for and loving them, they can last up to 20 years. Calvin proved precisely that. Two species of chinchillas live today, Chinchillas lanigera and chinchilla. Chinchillas lanigera live in captivity as people's pets. They have long tails that resemble a cross between a mouse, a rabbit, and a squirrel. They are more closely related to porcupines and guinea pigs despite their looks though. As a long-tailed chinchilla, Calvin was a small rodent with a large head, ears, and eyes. His forelimbs were much smaller and less developed than his hind limbs. He moved on all fours, but also had fun hopping with his hind limbs. He had gray fur which turned white on his tummy. He found different ways to get noticed and to keep us company, like growling and chattering his teeth. The second species, chinchilla, are short-tailed chinchillas. They have shorter tails, smaller ears, and thicker necks than the lanigera. Chinchillas arrived in the United States of America in 1923, long before landing in Europe. Matthias F. Chapman had a special license to import them, and he brought 11. Nowadays, chinchilla pets in the US are descendants of these first 11 rodents. When we welcomed Calvin to our home, I knew nothing about rodents or their social nature. I thought an animal living behind bars wouldn't socialize as much as other pets. I was wrong. Calvin lived inside his cage, but we enjoyed freeing him in limited and safe areas. It was our way of sharing a common space and allowing him to be close to us. We had to be vigilant though. Calvin loved nibbling on the baseboards of our house, but he never bit any of us or any person introduced to him by us. He recognized our smell as a safe interaction.
Wonderful. That's a great piece indeed, because it explains a lot that folks sometimes don't know about chinchillas. It's just, it's kind of an exotic, sometimes animal that we don't think about. So wonderful. The question actually that I was posing, I answered already, was where can people get the book? So again, you can get it through any of the online sources if you're various parts of the world,
everywhere.
because everywhere, so through different online sources, and the other thing also, I always advise folks, especially here in Fresno, we have a couple of great independent bookstores. So if you go to them, give them the name as we have put forth, or you can get a hold of me. I'll be more than happy to give you information, and if they're independent bookstores, they obviously can order them from the publisher and have them here. So you can get them many ways if you don't do online If you're here in the Fresno area, as I said, we don't have the bookstores that we used to have years and years ago, even though we're a population of almost 700,000, but we still have a major one, and we still have two great independent bookstores, and folks know who they are, and so you can go to them as well. So, Inês, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations again on your book, Calvin and the Sugar Apples. Hopefully those here that follow us and those who will be following us also can also get the book, and we encourage you to do so. And children's literature is a wonderful investment in your children. I've always said that it's wonderful to have books, but it's any parent also should invest, if he or she can, on books for their kids. So it's one thing to have, some shelves full of your books that you like to read, but also invest in your children's books, because they will treasure them forever. And that's, of course, how we build this the love for reading. It starts young, and children's books can also bring important messages, I should say, as yours does, from the reading that you gave us and from some of the explanations. So again, congratulations, and we hope everyone gets Calvin and the Sugar Apples.
Thank you so much for having me, Denise.
Thank you so much. Congratulations on this launching. Thank you. On behalf of the Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute, we again congratulate Inês Oliveira. The book is called Calvin and the Sugar Apples. We thank all of you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on another event of the Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute from California State University, Fresno. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.